The Dauntless. Oh no, I am not done. Another round, Melan states as she immediately jumps back up. Modan's actually a little surprised at this. He had already begun letting go of the technique. You sure? A masterfully controlled web of tri-tight rail shot is no easy thing to overcome, Kylon notes. Count us down. I want to go again. And this time, I got an idea. By all means, I don't want to find an unknown weakness in my style while under enemy fire, Modan states. All right, set yourself up, human. Your trick has a weakness, a big one, Melan remarks. Then why didn't you use it earlier? Modan asks, as the blurred edges of his vision sharpen into focus and the information begins flowing freely. She's on the first level of mastery. She has a bad tendency for tunnel vision in a fight, Kylon says with a sigh. Thankfully, when he heart stops hammering like a drum, she can actually use her skull for something other than the occasional headbutt. I'm not that bad, Melan protests with a dusting of pink across her cheeks. Yes, you are. Now, if it's not too much trouble for my delicate, fragile, frail little flower of a daughter, properly beat the ever-loving gall out of the boy a quarter your age and twice your size. I didn't raise you to be a layabout. Ouch. Modan notes even as Melan gives a somewhat hurt look to her mother. The younger Tret rolls her shoulders and there's a look of absolute focus. Begin, Kylan orders, and Modan has to outright teleport to avoid her grabbing for the coins. The movement sets off the bouncing cage of monetary madness, but it seems to be nothing more than a distraction for him as she suddenly does, something to the local axiom. It doesn't interfere with anything though, and in his accelerated perception of time, he catches a glimpse of his reflection in her eyes as she charges at him. He barely gets his arms up in time to block the blow. A disrupting wave of axiom is sent out with the blow, and she clearly reads the first effect to judge things clearly. Clever. She's noticed that his physical mind alone isn't enough to make all these calculations and observations, so she's trying to find a way to disrupt his. The next disrupting pulse rattles him, and she sees it and smiles viciously. The coins scream into her, but she's reinforcing herself to the point that she just ignores the raw force that would drive the coins clean through the sides of tanks and delivers another smashing and disrupting blow. It carries 5 different disrupting bands on a manner similar to the one that rattled him earlier. But he already shifted the entire axiom array in such a manner. So you can alter it, good, but it's still an axiom construct, Melan states, before reality seems to jolt around her. Probability says she hits him. Modan says she doesn't. Modan wins the debate. Still, she's twisting space itself, a half-aborted teleportation technique that brings Kylon to rush in and smack Melan on the top of the head. What the hell? Modan asks, even as Kylon starts haranguing Melan in another language. But he does get the impression that her spatial shenanigans are something deeply disapproved of. Miss, get off the mat. None of that from you either. Your trick is interesting, but just a trick, and now my daughter is... Mother, Melan protests. And as Kylon tries to swat her, a coin slams into her fingers. Young man, my daughter might have her basic mastery down, but it's a basic mastery. You strike me with another of those coins, and I will put your trick through its full paces. Modan raises an eyebrow as he slowly brings up a hand, places it between mother and daughter, and very gently begins to push Kylon away. Then his arm moves clean through her without resistance as she phases out of reality. Do you understand how or why an empty hand master operates? Kylon asks. Only those abilities which are truly mastered. The title of master is only given for every 5 skills mastered. Strength enhancement, enduring enhancement, perception enhancement, reflexive enhancement, and speed enhancement are the basics. Modan notes as he directs the coins to stack up in his hand. That's right. Now, what's another big tenet? Not to use any unmastered technique in battle, Modan states. But this is not a battle. This is a spar. This is training. With the level of damage you've been causing? Less than you brought to Cenk. We might have some bruises, however. Mother, how am I to ever master spatial contorting if I don't practice on the field? Melan asks, and Kailan sighs. But this is not just a simple spar, it's a demonstration as well. No showboating half-mastered techniques in front of an audience, Kailan states. Though if you yourself are looking for criticism, then your technique is fragile. My daughter was going to tear it apart before I intervened. Perhaps you could let her then. If I'm going to make anything decent out of this setup, I need it to go through its paces. Yes, well, perhaps you should take care of this, Kailan says, snapping her fingers, and Modan feels half of his axiom array shatter. His eyes widen. The Cascade meditation was created to fight against primarily axiom creatures. It's one of the most reliable ways to fight a Gravia, and your primary weakness beyond requiring setup and immense focus needed is that you essentially become half Gravia as you do so, which means you become vulnerable to techniques designed to oppose them. Is what she was doing. That was known as a disruption blow. It's designed to rattle and shake the focus of axiom adepts. It reveals their totems and shows off their static effects. And that haze was so she could more easily observe things. Correct. Now, Kailan begins before turning to Melan, before pausing and turning back to Modan. You want to keep fighting. Even though I've now clearly defined multiple methods to take you down, you still want to spar with my daughter? Of course. This isn't a life and death struggle. The more you bleed in training, the less you bleed in battle, Modan says before smiling. You've clearly seen that your daughter needs more training, and my training is never finished. Perfection is impossible, but it's one of the worthiest goals. Every time I speak to one of you and yours, I start going through adoption papers in my mind, youngling. Very well. I will step aside. No killing each other now, Kailan says with a smile before taking a few big steps back. You may begin again. Melan's first move, after throwing her mother an exasperated look that nearly instantly shifts into an impudent grin, is to suddenly be surrounding Modan. She's bending space in such a way that she's effectively all of them. The coins come out and she moves to intercept immediately. Unfortunately, he was expecting that, and the slightest movement as he moves to intercept is enough to get them rocketing around, only for her to start toying with the math as she starts shifting space in such a way as to mess with his focus. This is a lot harder for you than for me, isn't it? Oh, really? So, throwing a chunk of metal into the intricate inner workings of a machine might be less mentally taxing than crafting and maintaining it. Who would have thought, Modan asks, even as he reinforces and enhances the axiom construct and more information flickers through his mind. Not only is it far too much for a single mind to process, but interpreting the data requires far more brain power than human hardware can accommodate. Thankfully, the waveforms, when observed and understood, are downright trivial to collapse, so that's 1/3 of the insanely difficult combination easily accomplished. She keeps bending space and weaving around, deliberately interfering with the coins to alter the odds and trajectories. He can keep the coins bouncing, but she's fond of pattern. She's had time to think. She suddenly starts developing her own axiom construct, similar to his, even as her eyes narrow in focus. His punch for her head and the quintet of coins slamming into her without hurting her are dodged or ignored as irrelevant. She fears him physically making contact more than the bouncing bullets he has going on here, which is why he starts pressing her hard as he gets a better feel for her space, bending nonsense. There's a pattern. She covers the sides and directly overhead, but she doesn't seem to expect it from him. She doesn't block coins that are clearly going to miss, and there's also about 5 centimeters of clearance from the lower portals to the floor. He's going to have to expose one of those weaknesses to get a good shot in. Her hand-to-hand abilities are the kind that an MMA fighter would commit gruesome murder to possess. She especially likes going for his knees. The result is that he's adjusted his gait to be as solid as possible. He's basically stomping from a wide and sturdy stance and into another wide and sturdy stance. Then he barely twists out of the way of a pair of palms covered in energy. They hit a coin instead, and everything shatters. The coin was the target. The coin with a trace of axiom in the exact pattern he's using to warp probability. The disrupting wave of energy crashes outwards and he barely switches things around in time. The coins suddenly slow before rocketing around again. "Ah!" she begins to triumphantly exclaim before he grabs her via the wrist and drags her into a knee right to the gut. "Ha!" Her triumph is turned into a bruised stomach as she's shown he's got quite the fight left in him. She suddenly starts moving like a damn wildcat and he's forced to take several steps away as she's now clearly going for his eyes and is determined to have them no matter what his opinion on the matter is. Then comes a barrage of disrupting energy and she deflects the swinging fists he's sending for her head. She's catching on to his subconscious rhythms. She's learning fast. He breaks his rhythms. He forgets the coins entirely and starts indulging in personal probability manipulation rather than on his tiny vessels of chance. He whips out with one arm while turning to the side before flailing with the other and catching her right in the ribs. He can feel something give way through his stupidly lucky axiom adjustment that lets him outright ignore her protections. Her answer is to weave with the brutal blow and he staggers to the side in a drunken-looking stumble to avoid what surely would have either broken his nose or cracked his jaw. And he's using those, thank you very much. He'd rather they not be broken. Also, she's very flexible to pivot like that and get her foot that high. He's taller than her and was damn near kicked in the face. Then she seems to outright shift, but there's no axiom as her body contorts and her other leg is brought up. He ducks down and she stomps right next to him and he catches her knee before she can slam it into his face. It was a bluff. She instantly starts channeling a disrupting pattern and by the time he forces her away and gets distance, his mental enhancements have been severely weakened. They're using perhaps only 1/10 of their actual power, and his vision begins blurring at the edges with only a few hints of the sheer knowledge he's perceiving but scarcely able to actually process and understand. But he still has enough control to make a final alteration to the pattern and keep its slightly altered state alive. 22 tri-tights slam into her bottom and she's outright flipped upside down by the sudden impact. She kicks hard mid-arc and rights herself before landing. 1 second. Time enough for him to repair the worst of the damage. He's maybe up to 60% control. You don't need much, do you? Keeping a pattern going is infinitely easier than starting one. He answers and she nods. Now then, shall we finish this? Yes, let's. She answers even as the coins begin to ricochet around him without touching the walls, floor, or him. A cloak of clinking, clattering coinage, faster and faster until he looks like he's caught in a blue-tinted heat haze. The little display and her tendency to play into the drama has served him well. He's back up to his maximum control. She takes a strange stance, as if holding a large sphere to the side while getting ready to sprint forwards. The axiom begins violently twisting towards her. Whatever she's planning, it's big. Meilon, if you use that technique, I will bend you over my knee and remind you who's in charge, young lady. Kylon threatens. What? Come on, mother. Haven't you heard? Humans can handle it better than anyone else. Meilon returns. And the moment you shatter his axiom, he loses all control of those coins and they scatter into each other to shatter and slice the audience. Do not, Kylon warns her in a stern tone. You've weaponized Null? Send an axiom blast just under the threshold into a complicated and powerful pattern. Boom! Everyone hits the ground and any trick is torn to pieces. I see. I cannot risk it. I concede that a null blast is a disarming move in an axiom duel. Modan says, sticking his hand into the haze and the coins stack up into his hand. The moment the metal stops moving, he pushes away the construct. Second round is yours. What? Oh, come on. Your mother is right. If I lost control of those coins at those speeds, someone would have been killed. A demonstration should never have fatalities, Modan says even as he begins tucking things away. You've taught me a great deal. Thank you for the match. Best 2 of 3. Oh? But we've already seen what my technique does to the unprepared and you've revealed a trump card against it. Which is why neither of us will be using either. How do you fight when you're not getting reality itself to cheat for you? I'd like to think fairly well. Prove it, Melon says, and Modan finishes tucking the money away and removes the jacket and shoulder holster of his uniform. He places them to the side of the arena and takes a boxing stance even as he pulls on the axiom. Very well, he answers. His first punch kicks up a pressure wave that ruffles a quarter of the audience. Melon dodges so easily, she seems to have started to dance rather than fight.